will China and Brazil, together with the others in the global south, safeguard the common interests of developing countries? And how will China and Brazil make joint efforts to tackle the global challenges such as poverty and climate change? To answer all these questions, we are delighted to have this panel discussion in Rio de Janeiro. And joining us today are a group of experts from Brazil and China who are dedicated in building connections between these two countries and with the rest of the world. So without further ado, let's meet them. So how about we start Ting's Chak? Please say hello to our audience.
Hello everyone, I'm Ting's Chak from the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, hello everyone, my name is Renato Penelope, I'm from GGI, Global Governance Institute. Good to be here.
And the gentleman sitting on this side.
Hey guys, I think I'm the only one from this city. My name is Marco Fernandes. I am from, I'm a geopolitical analyst from Brasil de Fato, which is Brazilian media, and also editor of Wenhua Zhonghang International from China.
Welcome. And Lon?
Hello everyone. Actually, you're not the only one from Rio. I'm also from Rio de Janeiro. My name is Luis Clear. Yeah, the Rio connection.
Division there. Huh?
So yes, my name is Luis Clear. I'm the executive secretary of Ibrix Plus initiative. Yes, that's it.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today, because you guys have so much research and observations in this field. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on this. And the first topic I think I really want to address is how to tackle poverty, how to help the world to reduce poverty. I think another reason that we are gathering in this city, in Rio, your guys' hometown, is because the city is hosting the G20 Summit. World leaders are gathering here, and one of the main topics is dealing with poverty. For example, a new project will be launched this time. It's called Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. And as you all know, you have been living in China, visited China for many times. China made a lot of contributions in reducing the world poverty as well. So I'm wondering, what's your thought on how can China and Brazil work together to reduce the global poverty? How about we start with you, Tings?
I mean, I think it's a really good question because both Brazil under Lula and China under Xi have been extremely important leaders in the struggle against poverty. Of course, we know that in the first 2 terms of Lula, he was able to take Brazil off the hunger map. But unfortunately, the years after, Brazil actually fell back into that hunger map, where 30 million people in Brazil were living with hunger, without food security. So I think to see Lula back in this position and taking a leadership role in the global stage is really important. And of course, under Xi, his hallmark program was the Targeted Poverty Alleviation Program that was able to remove the last 100 million people living in extreme poverty out of extreme poverty. And it's a really interesting example, including the institute that I work for has done a study going into the countryside in provinces like Guizhou, the historically poor provinces, to see how the party mobilized the hundreds of millions of people when you talk about who actually participated, whether it's the party cadre, whether it's the public sector, the students, the universities, the private sector, to be able to complete this mission. So I think it's a really exciting moment to see China and Brazil on this global stage taking leadership on the poverty question.
I think I noticed in recent years there's a huge interest from many countries, not just in Latin America, from Africa, from everywhere, from developing countries. They are really curious. They want to know how China did it, eradicated extreme poverty. So I'm wondering, do you want to add some thoughts on this? How can the experience that China used be adapted to the rest of the world?
Well, I think the most important thing from China's example was the capacity to mobilize the whole society to tackle the poverty issue and hunger issue, which I think it's from private sector, the state, civil society, the media. I mean, you have how many movies and TV series about this in the last year. So there's also a way to mobilize people and to make people in the cities that live away from poverty most of the times and create empathy with the issue, with the problem. So I think this is a good example that other countries could learn from. And now we still don't know how this global alliance will work, But for sure, the examples of both China and Brazil should be taken into consideration in order to try to solve this global issue. And just last thing, I mean, it's a crime that we still have hunger in this planet. You know that according to FAO from United Nations, we produce food. Today, we produce food enough for 14 billion people. We are 8 billion in the planet, and maybe 1 billion or more are starving right now. So I think this is also one of the challenges that we have is how, I mean, capitalism is not going to solve the problem alone. So we need alliances like this that Brazil is trying to push, and we need to learn from examples from China as well.
Thank you. Do you guys want to add on this topic?
Yes, like I think like both put a lot of like good insights. We have historically a partnership between Brazil and China, which every time they move together, the world shake. We go back in BRICS when it started itself, like, you know, was both countries moving around, pushing like South Africa later. When we built like COSBAN, which is a special line of communication between both countries, or like economical relations just increased to the roof. They become like, we became like the biggest partners, like at least like for Brazil. So I think that this relation on poverty and also the environment is crucial to have connection between such important players in the South, global South. We can see like experiences like teams that are well placed, like Brazil, like when we had these two governments of Lula taking 40 million people out of poverty, and then China doing this long process of 40 years, which is more consolidated. So we can exchange expectations and like also perspectives. And the environment is also working to bring people to poverty. People in the poverty conditions tend to suffer even more, especially women, right? Like women tend to be the ones that most suffer during like this environmental crisis. Just recently in the south of Brazil, like big floods, in the north, drought. So like we are like facing the need of cooperation between nations. And poverty, as Mark well placed it, is something that we have nature to, like, you know, we have capacity to overcome. We're the biggest, like, you know, agriculture producer in the world. So we have the potential to feed our own people and support other nations to overcome that. So I think that's the natural relation that Brazil and China can like really bring together, and that's where we're stepping here. We're coordinating actions in the G20. We're dialoguing with APEC. We were not present this time. We were invited, but there's a potential there. And I think this leadership that we can also have in like South America can with China make sense, and like also help us to understand better how to act and how to exchange like positions. So yeah, I think we have a lot to add.
Yeah, thank you.
Under these remarks going on fighting the poverty in Rio de Janeiro, it came to between 2015 and 2016, Rio de Janeiro was going through a crisis. And back in these days, we had like 400,000 people that has lost its job back these days. And after that, we started to rebuild our state. Especially after the new government term here in Brazil, the Lula's president and new governance here, and with this cooperation between among the global South, especially the relation between Brazil and China, we are developing so many projects together, that are in fact having benefits to the people from Rio de Janeiro. State and also Rio de Janeiro city, that are also providing some high quality jobs to people here. So this relationship especially is special to this city. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think another highly anticipated event is the state visit, because during the G20, Chinese President Xi Jinping and our Brazilian President Lula da Silva will meet in Brasilia. So it got the world's attention. Some Western mainstream media already wrote articles, sour grapes all over. So some of the people are not happy that Brazil is choosing China over some other countries. But I think there's a lot of potentials between China and Brazil. Brazilian president visited China in last year. and now Chinese president is coming to Brazil as well. So I'm wondering, what's your guys' expectations for this meeting between the two leaders? Share with us some of your expectations. Sorry.
Yeah, like I think I can go for it. We're facing right now like a world in big transformation, right? So this great potential that both countries has, it also face like challenge along the way. So it's not just the way we want it. We were expecting more. We were expecting Belt and Road. We were expecting a deeper relation. So some steps gotta be taken in a way that like consider other influence. And I think this visit of Xi is first to like celebrate this 50 years, which is 50 years that understand the challenge the world always plays. Like between both countries, there's a whole planet. So I think like the leaders are understanding that there's mainly three platforms where I think like they can work strongly, which is like poverty alleviation, as we always spoke about it, like the environment challenge that like the world is facing. We cannot ignore that. And I think there is a word like it's a big trend in Brazil right now, which is synergy. We might have a synergy which we can like also improve our economy relation. China is looking for import like from global south, and Brazil needs to improve its industrialization. So there is like a challenge that both countries face that they find answer in each other. So there is a potential of the capital of China coming to Brazil, improving our industrialization, which will support like job creation and other like synergies that can like maybe bring us to the key success, which will be the integration of South America, which we've been looking for. Imagine like fly from Colombia to US is cheaper than flying to Brasilia. This is like, that's the lack of infrastructure that we are suffering. So I think this is the kind of dialogue we must have it. So that's what I'm expecting. Yeah.
Please.
I mean, one of the interesting things Renato, you were talking about in terms of how to actually improve the industrialization of Brazil is a big question. I think one of the really interesting projects that have come between Brazil and China in the recent years has been looking at how to, actually it's related to the previous question of food. Because here we know Brazil is a land of agribusiness, but agribusiness doesn't really produce food to feed the people. It produces commodities for the commodity market. But who produces food? It's small-scale farmers. It's family farmers. And one of the important agreements that have been made between the two countries is to actually bring some of the machinery that China has developed, the technologies from that. Because why? Because China had a revolution, had a agrarian reform, and means that the food is being produced by small-scale family farmers. Very similar pattern to the food produced in Brazil. And so now the first, this last year, the actually second round of machinery is actually going to the northeast provinces and northeast states of Brazil to try to improve the mechanization, the modernization in the industrialization of family farming in the Northeast, which is historically a very poor region where a lot of the peasants are. Also with the idea that this eventually will be a technology transfer to create factories actually in Brazil through joint ventures, not just Chinese capital flowing in here, but how to actually improve the industrialization of the countryside. So these kinds of synergistic projects are what we hope will come more in the years to come, right?
Yeah. I think you mentioned a point that many global South countries are why they are choosing China, because I think during the FOCAC, at some summit among the African delegations, they are saying the same. They hope the Chinese entrepreneurs or experts can help Africa to achieve industrialization, technology transfer, but it's not they all agree it's not a brain drain, but they are actually make the technology and the businesses and the jobs they created stay in Africa. So I think that's probably one of the differences between the engagement with China and with the previous Western world.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we're seeing more and more of that, especially people who are getting trained in China and the universities to become technicians, to become scientists, and usually those people go back to the countries, unlike the previous pattern of the brain drain going to Europe or the US, and the idea is to stay and not contribute back to the development and the industrialization of your own country. So.
Yeah. What's your expectation for this state visit between Chinese president and Brazilian president?
Well, talking again about synergies, which is the trendy word here in Brazil, in the relationship with China. I think, first of all, I think they proved a very important synergy early this year, April or May, when Celso Amorim, who is sort of like the Brazilian Wang Yi, which is the senior diplomat of Brazil, he came to China, he met with Wang Yi in Beijing, and both Brazil and China issued a statement for 6 points for the peaceful solution to the Ukraine war. They're calling like the Peace Club. And since then, Brazil and China have been working a lot, especially with countries of the Global South, because at the end of the day, we know that U.S. was criticizing, not accepting, NATO as well was not accepting the statement. But even though Brazil and China are working together on this, Brazil also during the Kazan BRICS Summit in Kazan, Brazil also mentioned that we will use this year Brazil's chairmanship of BRICS to push for a peaceful solution for the Ukraine war. So I think in this sense, this synergy is working very well. In terms of the economic relation, I think there's a big expectation, as both Tings and Renato was saying, that Brazil is looking for its reindustrialization. And of course, it needs huge investments, which right now is not so easy to do in Brazil because of very high interest rates that we have in the country right now. So of course, China is a big potential investor in Brazil. But there's some imbalance that I think Brazil and China still have to discuss. And especially, I think Brazil needs to propose to China. I'll give one example. Brazil was the fourth largest recipient of Chinese investments in the world from 2005 to 2021. But 75% of these investments, Chinese direct investments in Brazil, were in one sector, energy, which is critical for China, also very important to Brazil. But it's not enough for Brazil. I mean, the same investments were like around 5% in infrastructure and 5% in manufacturing, which is exactly what Brazil needs most right now. But again, this is not China's task. This is Brazil's task to sit with China. Lula sits with Xi Jinping and say, okay, this is some of the critical strategic investments that we need. So this is one of the things that we expect from this visit. We don't know. It's going to be a short visit this time. I think President Xi Jinping is already away from home for many days. First to APEC in Lima, now Rio, then Brasilia. So maybe not enough time to have the deeper discussions in some of these issues. But again, I think we are in a very good moment of Brazil-China relationship. So I think there's ongoing discussion about how to upgrade the economic and political relationship between both countries.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
On this remark, I think still talking about this kind of development projects, we have three majors here in Brazil right now. One headed by each ministry here. One is the ecological transformation by Fernando Haddad, the Rui Costa Novo PAC, which is the new project of accelerating the growth, and also the new Brazilian industry. The thing here for me, the Chinese creating is this new whole model of how to relate with people, how to develop the international relations. Because before China's recently development, the developed countries, they look at Latin America as just another region. Nowadays we have like a lot of proposals here, a lot of ideas here of how establishing our new development in Brazil in a more sustainable approach, in a more inclusive approach. But all of this was possible because of the projects that China is proposing to the world. So I think this is something else, like this new kind of international relations going on here. Majorly because of China.
I think a lot of people, a lot of countries are placing their hopes on China and Brazil in leading the drive of safeguarding the common interests of developing countries. So can you guys talk about what have the developing countries have been going through? Why are they demanding a new world order that is more just to them, what they have suffered, and now what they want, where they want to go? Was there Yep.
Yep.
What's their goal?
Good
So
point.
do you want?
Should
Do you
I
wanna
go?
start?
Yeah,
Sure.
I can. Yeah, all right. So like, I think there's a world in transition, right? We went through the falling of the Berlin Wall, and since then we live a hegemon like world, and now we're living the rise of like, that discussion that Fukuyama was wrong, So there is a world in transition again. And this movement is bringing expectations to the global south because the global south is finding ways of like developing itself. So we look at United Nations, we look the global finance, like we need reforms, we need change, we need something that really answer the needs of the global south, because so far everything that was proposed was to keep us under a system, keep us under a control. Since Bretton Woods, we still like running the world in one country currency, which is not fair to the other nations, because this becomes like something like a weapon. I can tell you what to do, I can tell you how to manage yourself, and this keep pushing. So everybody needs a change, but no, to want and to be able to do is two different things. So you need some strengths, you need some like, conjuncture, like some powers that can make this step. And I think Brazil can play a role in South America, play a role in Africa. I think China can play a role in Africa, in Southeast Asia, or in Asia itself. Russia is playing its influence too. It's also an important partner. So again, we come back to what BRICS is like meaning itself. And I think that's the direction we should go. I think that's why a lot of countries are looking towards Brazil and China relation with a lot of hope, a lot of expectations, because we need a governance reform, a global governance reform that can rearrange like finance in a way that everybody can prosper, everybody can develop. Yeah.
So, Tings, what's your thought on this?
I mean, I think today, when you're talking about developing countries, or what we call global south today, comes out of a historical process that I think is still unfinished. Let's think now, like we're at the eve of a very important meeting of the Global South, which was the Bandung Conference. It's going to celebrate 70th year. Obviously, at that point, Latin American countries weren't participating because it was a conference of African and Asian countries that were either newly independent or about to be independent. That process of fighting against colonialism and imperialism in many ways hasn't been realized yet. Countries of the Global South are still trying to find their sovereignty, their national sovereignty in the sense of economic sovereignty, political sovereignty, and in all the aspects. So I think that Brazil and China have been very important large countries of the Global South to try to propose new alternatives to the system that Renato said has not been working for the people of the Global South. BRICS was one of the initiatives. Of course, including Marco was there in Kazan. We have people following BRICS and comment more. But we have to remember it's still a very, very young process. We have these alternative institutions, be they economic, political, or otherwise, still needs time to mature so that can provide real solutions, real alternatives to, I think, the completely exhausted options, the so-called options for the Global South that came out after this unipolar period when the Soviet Union was collapsed. It didn't just fall out of nowhere, was collapsed. And then afterwards, this neoliberal agenda that was basically imposed, forced down the throats of many Global South countries that haven't proved anything for industrialization, for the real development agenda, resolving the questions of hunger, poverty, etc. So we have hopes that countries like Brazil and China can help lead in this process to finish this process of our sovereignty that we haven't actually gained for most countries of the Global South. So let's see what will happen.
Yeah.
We are still 50 years ahead to build this relationship. So.
Marco, you?
Well, I mean, agreeing with both Renato and Tings, I think, first of all, I think China is giving a very important example and actually a huge contribution to the development of this new world order, especially when you think about Belt and Road Initiative, which mobilized like around $1 trillion in the last 10 years to improve especially infrastructure in the Global South countries, especially in Africa and Asia, but also in Latin America. And I think now a lot of the efforts in some countries in Africa and Latin America, also in Asia, for Belt and Road initiatives are also based on industrialization. Some very important investments that China has been doing in some countries. So I think this is the first thing. Second thing, I think we need to develop BRICS much more. I think BRICS is living a new momentum, especially I think after the start of the war in Ukraine, and last year, of course, with the genocide in Palestine. More and more countries in the global south are getting aware that we need to build our platform, a strong platform of global south countries. And I think, of course, in the last couple of years, we had a very important achievement in BRICS, which was expansion. Last year, we had expansion of full members, new 4 members. Saudi Arabia, we still don't know if it's on or off. And this year, we had also like this new partner members category. And maybe 13 countries are going to join, something like that. So, but again, there's a lot of issues that BRICS is raising concerns, is raising the necessity of change, like, for instance, the how IMF and World Bank works, and how it's actually most of the time is a tool of the Western countries to impose neoliberalism, to impose their own policies on our countries. So this is one. I think the issue of the dollar, and also the reform of the United Nations, which is something that both Brazil and China are pushing for, and all the BRICS countries right now. But again, it's all of this is way easier said than done. So I think the big challenge we're going to have in the next years is how BRICS can actually provide real benefits, real achievements to our countries, which I think we're still a little bit far from that, and in this moment. But again, I think we need to take chance of this momentum. I think the relationship between Brazil and China, of course, is going to be strategic for that. Also, Russia, which is playing a very important role. But at the end of the day, I think we also have to be much more united in the global south, because I don't think the West will just sit and watch BRICS developing, Shanghai Cooperation Organization developing, Belt and Road Initiative expanding, and as we saw, both Ukraine and Palestine, I think they are probably going to be very aggressive in their reactions. So that's why the Global South need to build a stronger unity to be able to deal with this challenge.
Yeah. So this past years, people have been thinking that because of unilateral sanctions and stuff like that, and also the Security Council that is no longer working as properly, the BRICS initiative and also some Global South initiatives was going to reduce its activities, because people, some countries could be scared and etc. But in fact, it was exactly the opposite. Nowadays, BRICS has almost 30 countries in its framework. And also there is a lot of countries that are formally applying to join BRICS. And we are going through a time of great challenges, but also for great opportunities, as some people are saying nowadays. And I think that this kind of tendency is something that cannot be stopped. Like this expansion of the Global South unity cannot be stopped. Some will try, of course, make this kind of relations to be stuck just like the Security Council. But see, you have been talking about Russia. Russia is now the 4th greatest economy in PPC, GDP. PPP, yeah, PPP.
Yeah, GDP, PPP.
Yeah, GDP, PPP terms, recognized by the World Bank.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, we thought that something like that would never occur. Actually, even NATO was thinking that the process would be the completely opposite, but it's not. So I think that we need to be scared, but yes, we need to be aware of the reaction of the Western powers.
Yeah.
Just one quick comment. It's interesting that you're raising the GDP PPP rank, because right now, from the 10 largest economies in the world, 5 are BRICS countries. China is the 1st, India is the 3rd, Russia the 4th, Brazil is the 7th, and Indonesia is the 8th. So 5 out of 10 of the largest economies in the world are BRICS countries. So this is absolutely unthinkable 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And as things were saying, I mean, going back to history, since Bandung conference times, I think we are living a real unique moment for the Global South. But again, huge challenges ahead.
Yeah, like if I may also, like talking about Bandung, I think there's a clear sign of dialogue in this Global South when you see, like, when she celebrates the 10th anniversary of Belt and Road, we had this Jakarta-Bandung like high-speed railway to celebrate. So this is a clear sign that China is in the game, is recovering this like old debate that Jeans brought, that Marco said, Luan is speaking about. So I think like we are like finding our synergy, right?
I also hope you guys can share the people-to-people connections and cultural exchanges between our two countries. You guys have been living in China for a really long time.
Yeah.
You visited China before. This is my first time in Brazil. I got the experience of flying for over 30 hours all the way from the other side of the globe. Probably because of the long distance. I think the people-to-people connections are not as, how to say, as much as we saw with other countries. We are really far away, almost the opposite side of the earth. But like yesterday, or just a few hours ago, Chinese President Xi Jinping published an article on Brazilian media describing the long history friendship between our two countries. Brazil is the first country in Latin America to upgrade a relationship with China to a comprehensive strategic partner. So the whole article laid out the historical connections, the friendship between the two countries. Now we are trying to upgrade the relations to the even better level because we have a much more responsibility in this changing world. I think to do that, we need to bring the people together as well. So from your experience, how to do that? Maybe you can share some of your experience, how to bring the young people together, how to make the people understand each other's countries, what need to do. We're probably gonna start with Luan, you.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
Because from a young person's perspective, because you interacted with many young people in China, why you been to China before, and what's your thought on China, and what young people can do?
Okay, so firstly, I have been working with Chinese people here in Brazil for the past 5 years, like receiving some delegation of Chinese people in Brazil every week, almost. But and this last October was my very first time in China. And you see, we are always like used to see pandas when talking about China. And some friends of mine in China, they are like in love with capybara, Brazilian capybara, and even President Xi has talked about the cute capybara in his article to Brazilian media.
That's also the profile photo.
Yes, I do. So yes, we're trying to promote like to link the capybara of Brazil right now.
Capybara to capybara relation. People to people relation.
Capybara to pandas relation.
Good. Capybara diplomacy.
Yes, it was my very first time in China, and people there were so welcoming. We were in agenda with the All China Youth Federation. There is a lot of forums going on in this sense of like bringing together young people from all over the world, not only in Brazil and China, but also in the Global South. There are some festivals going on, and we have a lot of shared culture as well. Like also in this text, President Xi has said that some Brazilian writers has translated some Tang Dynasty poems, and people in Brazil are very curious about China. And I also think that people in China are also very curious about Brazil. We have some projects that we can develop together in this field of culture, but also in the field of sports. We can China can help us to develop our economy, and we can help China to develop their football.
Please come here. Really.
There's a hope. There's a hope.
Transfer technology. Transfer football technology.
Yeah.
Make it harder.
Even with Chinese, we poke fun at ourselves. If some people from other countries, they say, "Oh, your technology in China is bad." We're like, "What are you saying? No!" And so we always fight back, right, to try to defend ourselves. But when people criticize our football, yeah, that's the only thing we cannot fight back. So we desperately need this help from Brazil, please.
We'll do our best.
We'll do our best. But just to finish this question, we have been also doing some academic researches. We have a lot of friends in Wuhan, Brazilian friends studying in Wuhan, but not only Wuhan, several different universities in China. And yes, I think this field of not only developing economics, but also develop the relation between people. I think in this very sense, we are doing a pretty good job. We received you here. You probably have some good time with Brazilian people on the streets. And everyone in Brazil is really welcoming. From every single people in the world are welcome here in Brazil. Even people from USA.
Everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
I think you said last month or a few months ago it was your first time.
First time in China.
In China,
Yeah.
Which city?
Beijing, Jinian, Nianzhou.
Oh,
Yeah.
how do you like the experience? Which is your favorite city?
Be careful.
My favorite city. I think it was Jinin because visiting the temple and yeah, it was a really great experience. But the things that most dragged my attention was about the public transportation, because we have a huge problem here with public transportation in Brazil, not just among cities, between states, but inside cities. See, I live in the west zone of Rio. Right now I'm living in São Paulo, but I'm from the west zone of Rio. My family house is there. To get here in Copacabana, it takes me almost 3 hours to get by. And in 3 hours, I travel almost, 400 kilometers in China, from Beijing to
3
Jinin.
hours take me from Beijing to, Henan province.
Yeah,
the province
exactly.
really
Almost
very far away.
almost
almost
3 hours,
Wuhan.
40 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So
1,200 kilometers.
yeah. And you see, everyone in our delegation, our Brazilian delegation, was amazed by the high-speed rails and also the metro lines. You see, the metro lines here in Rio. It was something that we thought we combined it between ourselves, which was, let's not make comparisons. Let's not make comparisons. But it was a really good experience. The food was amazing, and yeah, it was my very first time, and I hope that this goes for more times.
I would love to welcome you to go to China either to study or to work, because I noticed there's a growing Brazilian community in China, Latin American community in China. A lot of people from the global south countries are moving to China to study, to work. But it's not a brain drain, as I mentioned. They are curious. They want to know about the culture, the history, or maybe China's system. And a few months ago, I met a few African students from different African countries, and they are so smart. Starting in China for several years, their Mandarin level is much better than many Beijingers, much better than many Chinese people. Wow. And they've been to dozens of Chinese villages to learn the poverty alleviation projects in that level. And I asked them, well, do you see yourself using what you learn or saw here to contribute to the development of your country? And they said, well, that's exactly the point why we're here. Sure. We want to make the most of our time to learn, to study here. And their goal is going back to their country, maybe become an ambassador, maybe become a politician to improve their countries. So I think this is really good opportunity for all the young people from Brazil and the rest of the world, basically.
I would also say maybe it goes both ways too, you know, as a Chinese person that had a chance to live in Brazil, learn the language, get to know the culture, love the country, love the food, love the people. I hope that also more Chinese people can have the experience of other global South countries. Because I think sometimes, especially I think in the last 40 years where after the opening up and reform, a lot of the focus was really learning from the West, that is European countries, the US, etc. This sort of turn away from what was known as the third world countries. I think in this moment of, let's say, the new ascension of the global South, I hope that more Chinese people also get to go and learn from other cultures and countries. So one of the interesting things about the delegations that you were mentioning, this is a long history. We have actually, well before this 50 years of diplomatic relations that we're celebrating this year, we already had huge investments in cultural exchange. Actually, it was in this city, in Rio, 21 years before establishing official relations in 1953 that the Association of Brazilian and Chinese Friendship was formed. And many of these delegations at the time were very difficult. If we think it's hard to fly from Beijing to here today, at that time with all the diplomatic sanctions and everything, it was really hard. I mean, the first Chinese writers to come and visit Brazil in 1954 it took 8 days through many countries because of avoiding sanctions and you couldn't pass through these countries. But that experience was so profound. Those poets actually got to see exactly the beaches we're seeing, it's very distracting behind us, how people lived, what are the struggles of the people, and wrote some poetry that was published back in China. And also during this period, we had huge efforts to translate books and novels. For example, Jorge Amado, who lived in the city as well for some time, he till today is the Latin American writer that is most published and republished in China. But we need to renovate that. We need to give this, new generations of writers, new generations of musicians, new generations of, cultural workers to create that exchange. I think if you ask an average Chinese person about Brazil, they just say football and maybe carnival. I think we have to deepen that to many more layers to understand what is the lives of the people, what are the struggles of the people, what are the common feelings and we were talking about common destiny, but to create this idea of identification and solidarity. So I think this is a good example of that kind of exchange that we need to foster more.
I think Tings is a perfect example of someone from China blending into Brazil. You living in Brazil for several years and you totally mastered the language Portuguese.
Indeed.
You speak very well, fully integrated with the society. A perfect example of this exchanges both ways. We welcome more Brazilian people to China, but also we hope more Chinese people can come to Brazil and the rest of global South countries so we can fully understand each other, right?
Sure.
And you guys have been living in China for several years as well. You've been living in China in several cities. 5 years?
2 cities, 5 years, 2 cities, Shanghai, Beijing.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Well, I actually loved the experience, of course. I think totally changed my mind, my life. Actually, I'm very grateful for being so welcomed in China for all these years. And of course, I'm very happy to be here again, back to my hometown, Rio. But I think one of the things that you were mentioning, like this necessity of bringing more people to China, both ways, of course. And I think there are some ways that we can improve that. And this needs to be also an effort from the governments, from private sector. I would say like more exchange, academic exchange, students going both ways, Brazil and China. Also, I think in terms of the cultural production, of course, Tings was mentioning like in the 50s, 60s, how much literature was a very important way to connect both people. But of course, today we have, China has a booming movie industry now, like, I don't know, hundreds of movies every year and better and better. They're getting better and better, but we don't have access to these movies in Brazil. It's very rare to have a Chinese movie in the cinema in Brazil. And I think it goes both ways. I don't get to see Brazilian movies in China. So I think this is one of the things that we need effort also from the state, from the government, because sometimes the market alone don't give all the answers that we need. But last thing, a very interesting phenomenon is happening right now in Brazil. you know that for many years, China in Brazil, Chinese products was in 90s, early 2000s. They were still not so, let's say, good enough. Sometimes some cell phones,
Yeah.
But of course now it's totally the opposite. I mean, Chinese products are the best. And one thing very interesting happening now is the introducing of EV cars. Chinese EV cars in Brazil. So a few months ago, I was in São Paulo. I got an Uber. So the guy came with a BYD car. I was like, oh, that's cool. I never saw a BYD in Brazil. So I entered to the car and started to talk to the guy. It's like, oh, what do you think about this car? It's like, are you crazy? This is the best car I ever saw in my life. I don't believe it's so. And he started to show me everything. And of course, he's an electric vehicle, so he's an Uber driver. Yeah. So he's also saving a lot of money in fuel. But he was most amazed about the technology. And we were in the streets, and suddenly there was like a Renault French car coming, and he was like, oh, you see that Renault? That's a bunch of crap. It's so expensive, zero technology. Look at this car is much better. So I think in the next years, of course, there's already a big interest for China in Brazil. But I think especially because of technology, and I would say cars are a big part of that, I think there would be a increasing interest from Brazil to China. So I think this is also something that our governments also can exploit, and how to improve this, how to increase this interest in cultural level, academic level, people to people in general.
Yeah. And Renato, you're probably the one living the longest in China, 14 years in China.
Yeah.
Wow.
Our senior,
senior
fellow.
What made you move to China, and what kept you there for such a long time?
I think was the same that moved them all. Like, we were looking at, like, imagine Brazil, like 2008, 2009, booming, growing. Like, we had this strong government, like people getting very nationalistic, and like poverty being alleviated, violence going down. And I'm like, where can be better than this? And I heard like China was doing great. I grew up reading a lot of like, policies from China that was like, especially for education, which I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll graduate, try something, spend some time. And I went for 2 years of a master's degree. And it's not that I didn't try to come back. I tried 3 times, but I couldn't leave, And one thing I learned was like the power of education, because education really opens a lot of doors and show you like what the country is about, and you create like strong links with people that really make you I feel home there, And I've been living in Wuhan, like people call me very like Wuhan, like very
It's almost like a Wuhan chauvinistic person.
I love the city. I love
to bring him to Beijing. It's like,
nah.
He comes for a weekend, go back.
I go often to Beijing because we have this fast train that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But like, Wuhan is hard to live. And what I see, like, and then I speak as like a director of the Brazilian Citizens Council in Beijing. As you said, I see like an increasing Brazilian community. Before the COVID, we had like 16,000, but during COVID, like this really dissolved it. Like the world like suffered a lot with traveling, especially this people relation. But the strongest and most stable people were the artists. The artists were there, the singers, the musicians, the dancers. So these were the strong community there, and that really woke me up. The second stable group was the students. The students really stayed, they did, because there's a support of the government, and these people that study there. We had a very interesting policy in 2012, during Dilma, we called this Science Without Borders. So we had like more than 200 Brazilians coming to China a year. And these people like got in like important positions in this game between China and Brazil right now. So this people-to-people relation pass through culture, pass through like education, and it's where like it's holding strong. There's even an interesting saying, like Rio de Janeiro 200 years ago, they had this tea being planted here in the hills. They called it Chinese site. But it didn't prosper. Brazilians are not into like tea much, right? Yeah, there is like this discussion. We're coffee people, Beer, of course. But anyway, so like, what happened that this become, it was a flower, camellias that we call, and later in the abolitionist like movement, when we were trying to fight for ending the slave ship in Brazil, the movement here in Leblon that was fighting for the ending like the slave ship used this tea to kind of excuse their business, to take people out of town, to save some people that were slaves. So there is this deep connection of resistance, of changing social like constructions, and so there is like a cultural link between China and Brazil that like must be more explored, must be like deeper like lived, and like, and that's what keeps me in China, because like there's this dialogue that's interesting.
Okay, you're gonna retire in China as
Well,
well.
we never know. We never know. The world spins.
Okay, so before we finish this panel discussion, everybody can say your maybe your wish or your hope for the future of our countries, or you can share your expectations for the meeting between our two leaders. But everybody can say maximum 2 sentences. You can finish it within one
Wow.
sentence or 2 sentences. Think about it. What's your vision for the future of China-Brazil relations? Luan, ready?
So actually there is a Brazilian proverb which is andorinha só não faz verão, which is a swallow alone cannot make it to the summer. The idea here is that about the cooperation, like you cannot achieve your main goals alone. You have to be with someone, and we hope that we are together in this very bright future.
Okay. A little bit longer than 2 sentences, but I can accept that.
I wish that with the help of Brazil, China became World Cup champion.
Wow, how
I
can
want to
we-
see that day come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an offer we cannot refuse. We've been dreaming for this for such a long time. Please. Thank you. And things.
It's hard to top both of their comments. Maybe I hope for more Capivari and diplomacy. No, but I mean, I think these are actually interesting. We were joking right before we came here about these symbols of cuteness, but I think it is something about friendship moving forward. So
Yeah.
50 years more of Brazil-China friendship.
Yeah. Okay. Renato.
That's a challenge. Like after 4 great minds, and now like I have to say something. Well, I think all right, so 2 sentences, huh?
You've already used them up.
Oh, damn. You got me. Oh, I spent my words. But we had like 50 years until here. It was not easy way. So like the next 50 years is even more important. So be patient. Yeah.
Okay.
We're getting there. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate what you shared with us. We are living, well, in this interesting time where we always say we are undergoing these major changes that are unseen in a century. So, but I think there's hope for the global South, for developing countries, and I hope China and Brazil can lead the drive in this changing world, right? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned with our panel discussion in the future. Thank you. Bye.